What is happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you missed the last video, you got to go check it out. I'll link it up in the corner. We did a complete 3-link coilover setup on the back of this 77 Hilux. It turned out really good. Very excited about that. Now we need to move on to the frame. So we need to get this thing completely stripped. Like I said in the last video, I got someone to sandblast the frame for me. So we got to get it completely 100% stripped, bare bones frame only, and drop this thing off for sandblasting so that we can paint it. So that is what we're going to get started with. We also have a few other things to do while this frame is out. So let's get right to work stripping this frame down. Just like that, guys, frame is 100% stripped. So like I said, this whole front end comes off with 4 bolts, which is super handy. The only thing that these control arms were a little bit wider than what the frame was for some reason. I don't know if it was just the amount of shims. This is actually how they used to align, I think, the caster with just these shims in here. So I guess we'll have to figure that out later. We're gonna have to tear this apart and do all of our paint work on all that. But we are focused on the frame right now. There is one spot on this frame that we need to work on. It's the bottom. You can see right there, the bottom of this body mount kind of rusted out. The rest of the frame is in really good shape. I am going to cut that plate off, bend up another plate, weld it on there before we bring this thing in. So let's flip this frame over and get that taken care of, and then let's go drop this thing off for sandblasting. All right, we are loaded up, got the frame strapped down. I'm also bringing in a couple of the cross members, a transmission, and then that main suspension cross member. Gonna have those blasted at the same time. That's gonna save me so much time. So let's hit the road and get this stuff dropped off. Guys, we are cruising on the highway 60 miles an hour, a little over 60. We are in 5th gear, and you can see we're about 900, a little under 900 degrees actually, going down a little bit of a hill, but we are about 900 on flat ground, so really not that bad. It did get warmed up a little bit when we were getting on the highway, maybe hit like 1300, so it did get a little bit warm, but really not too bad cruising in 5th gear. Well, I just got the call, frame is done. Let's go pick this thing up. Alright guys, I got the frame back. Turned out pretty good. They were having some issues, I guess, with their air compressor, and it wasn't building up pressure, but all in all, it turned out pretty good. You can see some areas like here, there's a little bit, and then over here on these mounts, there's a little bit there on this other mount. So I'm gonna go around, hit those spots with just a wire wheel and touch those up. But all in all, 1,000 times better than it was, and the guy only wanted $100 to do this, so that saved me a lot of time and a lot of frustration, a lot of just sitting there grinding away at rust. So we are looking really good there. One thing I'm going to do before I get to that is I picked up these little mini bump stops. So the stock ones went bolted here, the bolts busted off there, but they were way too tall. So I'm actually going to thread these in. I'm gonna drill a hole in the center, right where the axle sits, and then I'm just gonna do a riv nut in the frame to thread that in, just because the frame's probably not thick enough to thread that. So we'll get the insert in there, and then we'll get the wire wheel out, hit these spots, and then we can get some epoxy primer out and epoxy the whole frame. All right guys, we got 2 coats of epoxy primer on the frame and that subframe piece. Now that cross member is, I'm gonna have to change it a little bit, so I'm gonna have to do a little bit of cutting and welding on it, so I didn't paint that yet. Now what I want to do is coat the inside of the frame before we top coat it. So I bought this internal frame coating from Eastwood, and it's got this straw that I think it's like 2 feet long. You hook it up to the can and it's got a little nozzle on it, and we can stick that into every little crevice and crack inside and coat the inside of the whole frame. So we're gonna do that. We'll let that dry up and then we will jump on a top coat. What I got for that is another Eastwood product. It's their 2K ceramic chassis black. So this is the activated one. Should make for a lot better coating and a lot stronger. So let's go. I don't know, I bought more than I probably needed. I bought 5 cans, but I don't know how far this stuff goes. So let's get on it and get the inside of that frame coated. All right guys, did 2 full coats on the entire inside of the frame and the cross member, and I only used 3 cans, so I bought definitely too much. This stuff does make a big freaking mess. My shop floor is already ruined, so I'm not too worried about it, but check this out. I even got from all the way from the frame, and it hosed my door somehow right there and right there. So that stuff does make a mess. I would say if you care about your floor, I'd cover it up, but we're gonna let this stuff sit. I'm gonna get out here tomorrow. It's getting pretty late, so I'm gonna get out here tomorrow, get the, like I said, we're gonna get this top coat, this 2K ceramic chassis black. We'll get 2 coats of that on the frame and we'll be done. Well, it's a couple days later now. This paint is dried up. They say actually about a week to fully cure, fully harden up, but it's actually getting pretty hard and it feels really good. I'm actually very surprised with the paint and the primer. It laid down really good. Turned out really even, especially for a satin. It turned out really even. Satin usually, if you have a heavy spot and a light spot, they look way different. This actually looks really, really even. So if you guys are curious, I used about 1.5 quarts of the epoxy and about 1.5 quarts of the paint to do I did 2 full coats of epoxy and I did 2 coats of the chassis black paint. So about 1.5 quarts for each. Like I said, I've actually never used the Eastwood epoxy or this specific chassis black. I'm actually really happy with it. It's a 2K paint, so it should be chemical resistant. It should hold up to like oil and gas. Brake fluid takes just about everything off. But this stuff should be good, especially with the frame being sandblasted. It should stay on the frame for a long time. We coated the inside. This thing should last another 50 years. Well, that's about it for this one, guys. Next video, we gotta start putting this thing together. We gotta do a bunch of suspension work on the front and get that all figured out. The rear is good to go, so we might be able to start bolting that together. I think I'm gonna tackle the front suspension next, get all that painted, powder coated, all that good stuff. And then we can start throwing the suspension on the frame and start getting this chassis back together. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Go smash that thumbs up button, comment, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.